find somebody when you're getting started out there to model, because
Yeah,
what
agreed.
they're doing obviously works. But then where ego comes in is where people are like saying, well, I don't want to be like him. I'm unique.
You've got to get around people that are doing the shit you want to be doing on the level and volume of what you want to be doing. Go in and be the damn student. I could learn from every person in this room. Think about how you talk about your business. Yes, passion sells, but you can't carry on a real conversation outside the passion. You're going to lose. So the whole point of all of this is, one, show up as you, fucking loud. Two, get yourself in frickin' rooms that scare the shit out of you. It's really about looking at those things that you know will move the business forward and doing them anyways. Thank you for allowing me to always show up as me, and thank you for showing up as you.
Welcome to growth mode. Rick, you've done some really cool things. I was actually pretty fascinated checking out your story because I didn't know a whole lot about you before your team reached out to be on the show. So I'm pretty stoked to sit down with you. I can tell you, building a business, man, I don't think there's a greater tool on the planet to get to know the dude in the mirror. And I use dude universally,
Yeah.
the dude in the mirror, than building a business, because you're going to find out what you're made of really damn quick. So talk to me a little bit about just, being a business owner, what it's like, what's the ups and downs, and how do you handle getting punched in the face every day, smiling and going again?
Yeah, you got it, man. I do differentiate when you said business owner too versus
Yeah,
entrepreneur.
100%.
And it's there's reasoning behind that. I know you're probably on the same page with me. Is that it's funny because I just got these new tumblers in, right? All in CEO, which is my
Nice.
program. I've got the podcast, but I love this. And then I also got self-made, like hats that literally just say self-made
Nice.
that we're going to throw out to people in my community. But that's part of what I'm answering your question with, is that's literally it, right? And I mean, I've taken now a company from literally being just me, like the singular IT consultants, all the way to now closing the deal to go public just literally a couple of days ago. Like
Nice,
the
dude.
press release
Congrats.
is going out today for that. So it's whenever this is published, it would have already happened. So
Right, right.
but it's cool. And it's also kind of surreal in that moment too. So when you're saying like business owner versus entrepreneur, like what does it mean for that? The last 2 weeks, you talk about getting punched in the face, the last 2 weeks leading up to closing that deal, right? And the deal's like, it's 8 figures in an amount that's gonna be funded over the next year in order for us to continue our growth plan, which is acquisitions, right? Mergers and
Right.
acquisitions, M&A, and also organic growth on that too. Like this morning with my team, I identified, one of our new acquisitions that we just closed on a month ago. They were doing 4 million in top line, and we just identified a way today because we have the ability to scale it, that we're gonna start invoicing $1 million a month
Wow.
immediately out of that. So it's like tripled the revenue almost overnight.
Wow.
But that doesn't come without getting punched in the face, dude. And these last 2 weeks leading up to closing this deal to go public was like hit after hit. Yeah,
Dude, I can only
and
imagine.
it's
The stress at that level is got to be insane. And I often tell people I think that the only people that find success are as ones that are crazy enough to not throw in the towel.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
most logical person's not going to look at some of the decisions and things we put ourselves through and go, yeah, that's something I want to do.
yeah, right on. Dude, I like
Yeah.
to win. I really like to fucking win. And I similarly, I always say it's like the difference between winning and losing is most often just not quitting.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I know there's several times as I've built a business where I've been stacked up against it. And I've never really had that thought process. I should go back and get a job. I've been doing, running company altogether 6 years, 3 years with the last venture,
Yeah.
but I've never had that throw in the towel kind of moment for me, but I've put myself into some pretty hairy, situations overall. What is your, I mean, there's
And you're
winning.
still
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
Um,
don't under acknowledge that, man.
But I appreciate that, because that's the truth. We don't often celebrate those small wins enough, and that's not even a small win. It's a pretty big
Yeah.
thing to be proud of that I hit year 6 this year going into year 7. But, for mental fortitude inside of building a business, I mean, it's a lot. I mean, people say all the time, it's a mental game, it's a mental game, and mental. But I don't think people actually understand how big of a mental game is until you're in the throes of it, right? Right
Yeah,
until you're in
yeah.
the middle of it. How do you navigate it? And then we're going to dive into a little bit about our company and some of the things you can help potentially help us scale this thing out.
Yeah, you bet. There's a there's a concept, right? Even my show is called All In, and it's like that's why this says All In CEO on here, and it's I'll go back to a story when I was actually in a job, right? Working for Best Buy at the moment, and I was really new sales guy. I wrote the sales playbook for Best Buy for Business, like their B2B division that they used to have before they
Nice.
shut the whole thing down in 2008, which is when I started my company, when I was literally laid off with like 700 other people, right when my twins were born. So talk about another like punch in the face. I mean,
Right,
my
right.
twins were 2 weeks old, dude. For my first kids, and that mental fortitude, because in that moment, it's like, well, I gotta do what I have to do.
Mm,
And it's like, there's stuff around you, and it's like I have 2 brand new mouths to feed, to care for, to make sure that they survive, have a roof over their head, and it's not a responsibility that I ever take lightly. So you talk about being all in, it's like you're forced in that moment, unless you're a jackass. In that
right,
type of moment, you are forced to be like, "There's nothing that I'm gonna quit for at this point, because I need to continue just building and moving forward." And what I saw in that moment was the fact that there are going to be things that are outside of my control, and this is the
for
mental
sure.
toughness part of it. Me being laid off was outside of my control. Shutting down a division that I helped build was outside of my control. Oh, this isn't a weird control thing, but if I can keep control and affect and make decisions to where I'm calling the shots for me every single day, for me and the people that I care for, which this isn't just my family anymore. I mean, taking a company public, having an acquisition,
Yeah,
going from 6 people to several acquisitions, going from 6 people to 80 people in a matter of like 2.5 years. That's a hardcore growth
yeah,
strategy,
it is.
and then now accelerating that to where we're going to be 4 times that, like 300 people a year from now.
Well, that's not even
And
just a hardcore growth strategy. That's a personal evolution.
yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure it is.
the guy you started with as one person solopreneur doing your business, now managing 80 people. I mean, that's an upgrade. That's like you
Yeah, it's
literally
like version
level up.
4.0 or 5.0 now,
Right, right.
It's not even 2.0 at this point anymore,
Yeah,
but that's accurate, man, because in that moment with my kids, it's like that was like 1.0 entrepreneur for me,
right.
and deciding like it's like this is who I'm going to be for the rest of this time. But that story in the car training a new salesperson, I don't even remember what I was talking about. I just remember his response. He was there only 3 weeks and was like, "Rick, I think I've learned you enough to know that no matter what you talk about, you're going to be passionate about it because you are all in."
Mm,
And it's like anything I choose to, and that's the point in making this in the mental side of things, is everything you have is a choice. Even not making a choice is a choice. Sitting back and being a lazy motherfucker is a choice.
right,
Not addressing what's in front of you. I mean, I could have sat back and collected unemployment forever, pretty much. Went out and found another job, but it's like I've got 2 kids here now. I've got a family of 4 people, and I need to be able to continuously provide for them. And at the same time, I love doing things for other people, even outside of my family. It's like I identified what part of my purpose was in that moment too. Like, how can I build something that both takes care of my immediate family in abundance and then have that abundance overflow onto a bunch of other people that I choose to surround myself with?
for sure. I was very much in a similar boat. So, I turned 40 before I even knew I could start a business, right? Just a blue collar kid. You work, you
Yeah.
get a job, you retire. That's the thing. And but when I launched my company, I was slapped with a non-compete that I don't remember signing. So I was a sales trainer before I left corporate America, supposedly one of the top in the country. I don't know what that means, other than I'm good at flapping my gums in front of a room, right? But so I launched my company. I couldn't talk about sales, sales training, business development, none of it. So 6 months in, my wife's Jeep was repossessed. We almost lost our farm,
Yeah.
right? I built a second house on the property for my mother-in-law. She lived here, so she was going to lose her place as well. So my wife cashed in her 401k to literally get her Jeep back and save the farm. And then she stayed my ride and died. We just hit 17 years together,
Nice.
but I'm very proud of that. But going through that, I had to hit some sort of rock bottom to actually begin to start fighting, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I was a kid who grew up in self-help books and all the likes, and, I was gonna talk myself into success and all that crap.
There's one of my favorite things that I tell almost everybody that I possibly can. It was years ago, I bought 1 share of Disney stock, right? The company was a lot different then than it is today, I'll just throw that out there,
For
I
sure, for
don't
sure.
enjoy the internal politics of that organization now,
Right,
but the 1 share, there's a couple of books, The Wisdom of Walt, you're talking about self-help books, right?
right.
But then there's also Beyond the Wisdom of Walt, 2 books that I would recommend to any business owner, any
Mm,
entrepreneur ever, because it talks about this dude's vision and how he took action on that vision. So like you're saying, the self-help books, that's great. You can talk yourself into this stuff, but the only thing that's actually gonna get it done is doing something about it, actually taking that first step. And I still have it. It's 1 share before Disney stopped issuing paper certificates, paper stock
that's
certificates.
pretty
It's cool,
cool.
dude. It's got all the Disney
Yeah,
characters on it and everything, and that's why I got it, even when I was broke, because I got it, like, 15 years ago, right? Even when I
right,
was
right,
broke, it
right.
was, like, only $70 a share or something, like, "I'm gonna get this," and my favorite quote in the whole world is on there from Walt Disney. It says, "At some point in time, you have to stop talking and start doing."
Mm, right. That's real, that's real.
Yeah.
I think I've been a guy that was a dreamer for a lot of my career. I mean, I've had some cool past successes, but I always play that game of when I get to here, then life will be good, right? When I accomplish this, life will be good. And I think even now with the business, there's a part of me that says when we hit this milestone, now we can start doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mental game for myself. As we go 3 years into this company now, 3.5, and we're growing. A big realization what happened to us this year is when we
Mm.
first started building the groups out, we were kind of a mixture of B2B, B2C. We had this kind of influx, and then we realized that the market for us was all in the straight B2B game. So we're in that transitioning phase now going B2B. So we're unfortunately losing some amazing people that are on the B2C side of things, but that's going to come with growing pains. And now we're looking to try and figure out, okay, how do we scale this? And one of our biggest difficulty is where we're known, man, people love us and they come in drones. It's going into an unknown market where nobody knows who you are,
Yeah.
and trying to bring in a philosophy, our vision, how we do things, our culture into the world. How do you penetrate into an area without trying to do a heavy marketing spend, that nobody knows you? How do you sneak into those areas and get your brand in there?
Yeah, I mean, the cliche, right, is it's networking, but I'm gonna
Mm,
use what you told me about your group as an example, 'cause I'm hearing this and it's a great transition. I think you're making an awesome transition into B2B because it's gonna fit, I think, the overall culture of what you described to me, as we were talking, like, backstage a little bit. I think
right.
it's gonna serve you well. The B2C individuals that you're saying you're going to lose, this has to do with your question. I'm curious as why they think they need to shed themselves from the group. And I'll tell you why. Because in my company,
Mm,
this is how I looked at it, right? I I look at things because we're completely B2B. Our services are B2B. We'll do a
right.
B2C play at some point. We just went public, right? That's our intention is to cybersecurity for all, because it really doesn't exist. Nobody
Right.
knows how to.
Right, for
That's
sure.
that's the whole reason of me being a disruptor in this space is like I'm building the first nationwide brand. I'm the first managed service provider to go from one man to publicly held without any funding. So it's like
Nice.
I'm trailblazing. And that's the idea is that then we'll move to consumers too, in a year or two, which is awesome. But we started B2B. However, the way that I've always looked at our customers is as if they were just regular typical consumers.
100%.
And yeah, so these individuals that are being shed, I don't know what industries they're in, or anything like that, but I know that they have things to offer the group, and I know that they can learn from the B2B side and apply it to B2C. Now there's a focus of the group that makes sense, but the bright ones, I hope would stick around.
And
And
and and we are keeping some of those because, what the smart ones are realizing is that, hey, if I'm hanging around with a bunch of people who are doing bigger deals, bigger conversations, that's bigger houses, that's bigger mortgages, right?
yeah, yeah,
That's bigger plays for their companies, but they don't always look at it from that function because they grew up in a world where networking was sell to everybody you meet
yeah.
versus
You
building relationships.
right on, exactly. And you will never learn more about financing, right? If it's because I think you're talking about realtors there. You will
Yep.
never learn more about financing than from somebody who's putting together $100 million deals that has a debt
Right.
component to it.
Yep.
or like an acquisition like I do and structuring the deal in a way that's creative to get the thing done. It's not just cookie cutter when it comes, or it shouldn't be anyways, when it comes to homes, properties, whatever else. There's ways that you can structure these things. I mean, they say like the two mortgages, like, bet like the 80-20 split. So you didn't put anything down, back
Right.
in 2005 and all that, and why everything crashed. There's still really interesting creative deals out there. Like even selling the house to a lease to own company, right? So the owner can sell I know this stuff just because I'm around people, right? You
Right.
can sell the home if you're looking at buying it, like they can sell the home to a leasing company for like a 99-year lease. They're going to make some money off of it, but then you can also structure an ownership portion of that so it's easier on the buyer. So as long as they can make the rent, the payment when they might not qualify for a traditional mortgage, that's an alternative way to structure a consumer-based home purchase. I
Right.
hope you play this in your group sometime because it'll probably blow some people's minds. There's ways but I know these things because I am around the people in the B2B space that I am, and because
Well,
of the deals that I've done in the B2B space.
well, and I think that speaks even to a bigger thing that, you go back to Jim Rohn and his whole philosophy of five, right? The five people you surround yourself who you become. I buy into that somewhat, but I also know that there's times that you can't control the five people you can be around, right? Like, I've got some family I love dearly. They're never going to be ambitious. They're content where they
Yeah.
are, and I'm happy for them, right? But around them, I have to protect my mindset of, okay, cool. We're just going to hang out and be around them. We're not going to talk business because they're just never going to talk to level. And I
You
think
do
for a
to an
lot of,
extent, and I appreciate you said this is like a coaching show, right?
yeah, bring it,
Okay.
bring it, bring it, bring it,
I
bring it, bring it.
I appreciate that to an extent because I can tell your good intentions that it's like they're my family.
Right,
And dude, I got the same thing, because I love it because I start seeing my brother now start to post like personal development quotes, when he's obviously been around me like literally his whole life, and I've been
right,
doing that shit for so long now, and it's like, I see him in a job where he's still making like 5 figures a year, at least I think that he is. And from what I know anyways, and it's like, man, there's so much more to this, and there's
yeah,
so much potential that you have and every opportunity, but it's like in those moments, he wasn't ready to receive it, but he's family. So there's been
right,
like things like he sees me do things and then there'll be like comments under the breath sometimes. Love the dude, absolutely love
yep,
him, but
yep,
it's exactly what you're saying. But in those moments, it's like you can't control who your family is, but you can control the amount of exposure that you could have.
100%.
Yeah.
But, an interesting thing that happened this year as well is my middle brother, Keith, he's been the only other person in the family that's gone out and tried to do something big. And he's run a couple companies and the likes. Never really been the entrepreneur guy. He's always been the president of somebody else's company type of
Yeah.
thing. But um, 2 years ago, he bought a background screening and drug testing company. And came in. About a year into that, he calls me up and goes, "Dude, I don't know what the fuck you do, but I think we need to talk." Uh, I said, "All right." He goes, "I don't know how to build this company." So
Yeah.
I brought him into our world and I showed him our networking groups and the like, and he had never done this. Is the guy, at one point he had a $170 million company going, and he'd never been around trying to talk to these small business owners and the like, dealing with this kind of stuff. 6 months in, we more than doubled his business, and we've since brought him into, the company, and now he's our national director, for all the chapters, and
That's
we
awesome.
completely revamped. He'll still never be that entrepreneur type of guy,
He's an
right?
entrepreneur.
Yeah, 100% he
Yep.
is, 100% he is. So when him and I get around the family, it gets really, really funny because now we sit and we just talk business.
Yeah.
And you can say everybody else. And so we have to remember to go, okay, let's separate church from state for the moment. Let's hang out with the family because otherwise we're going to go down all these damn rabbit holes and make them feel excluded. That's hard to do sometimes.
It
It's
is hard to do
almost,
sometimes. And the hard to do is actually out of a place of good intentions for you, and I know this because I
and for
recognize
them,
it in
and for
myself.
them.
For sure, exactly. And well, that is the good intention that you have, right? Because you have good intentions. They're in you. Maybe I phrase that wrong. They're in you for them, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's how you're approaching this. Because there's sometimes, like especially when it's family, like my brother's 5 years younger than me. I'm using him as an example. It'd be cool if he saw the show too. I don't care. Yeah, like for real. Love him with every part of me. Anything ever happens, I am there in a heartbeat.
Right.
There's times to where it's like, oh, it's like, th- look at what I've done, not in an arrogant way, based out of ego, but like use some of this to model. because that's something even in business when you're growing a business that I feel that you should do. Find somebody when you're getting started out there to model because
Yeah,
what
agreed.
they're doing obviously works. But then where ego comes in is where people are like saying, "Well, I don't wanna be like him, I'm unique." Fuck that.
Right.
Because you're just getting started, you can learn things from these individuals, and then ego even becomes more of a play when it's family, right? Because there's even more competitiveness that can happen when it's family. So when you're sitting there around family and it's the conversations that you're having, it's like the intentions like smack you on the head. Listen to me. I know what you need to do because I've been in your shoes 8,000 times already. And if you just listen to me for once, you'd have a better life tomorrow.
Right. Well, and even to play on the ego side of things is I struggled early on getting advice and coaching. Um,
We all did, bro. We
yeah.
all had to go through that kill the ego phase.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's so humiliating, right? To finally learn to be humble
Yeah. It's like, and then it's like,
because,
oh, this is easier.
right. It's like, why didn't I do this years ago?
Yeah.
Um, and I was at an event down in Atlanta, Georgia. I was one of the speakers down there, and I was talking to this guy named Chris Dadian, and I interviewed him on the podcast. And that dude's just got a philosophy that blows me away. But we were sitting there looking at the room, and there was some 8-figure, 9-figure earners in the room that were all speaking at this event. And you could watch the people approach these
Yeah.
9-figure earners, and you could tell who had been through it and met the dude in the mirror and who hadn't by how they approached the people. And you could see the people that were getting approached walk up, and it was fascinating to watch people and how they walked up to people. The people that have actually done things go up almost like with their hat in the hand. They're going up to be almost a student versus going in trying to teach them something where
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody who hadn't done it were trying to teach. And Chris said something to me at that moment, and he said, "Donnie, here's the difference between you and me on our journey right now." I said, "Okay, I'm listening." He goes, "I know I could teach something to everybody in this room." I said, "Cool, me too." He goes, "Here's where we're different. He goes, I know I could learn from everybody in this room." And I sat back on my heels because I was looking at that room and I'm like, there's some people I don't think I could learn from.
Yeah.
And he goes, sometimes it's learning what not to do. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's so true, right?
That's funny.
Uh,
It's
but
powerful
you know,
too.
it is,
Yeah.
because you get yourself in certain situations and you're like, ooh, am I even in the right room at the moment?
Yeah, for sure.
But still maintaining that student mindset.
Yeah.
It's
Let's be
hard when you
real.
got
I
an
mean,
ego.
yeah, I used to on my podcast, I used to have a segment called The One Thing, right? And it was always like, if you get nothing else, it's like, here's one thing I want you to grab out of this, whatever it is. But it, that came from a scenario like what you're talking about was, let's be real, there's some crappy conferences, there's some crappy events, that have horrendous speakers, but then in that moment, I always felt like, well, you know what? Isn't it my responsibility to try to seek something out? If I'm really here to
Mm,
seek out something new for me to take away and be able to execute on tomorrow. So now it's like when you take ownership of that, yeah, most of it could suck if it's just a bad event. But if you start looking for that one thing, you'll probably find more like 17 things if you
right.
start just looking for that one thing instead of like what you're doing is like stepping back and be like, am I in the right room? We've all had those thoughts, bro. Especially like after
Right.
like if there's a first keynote or something like, is this how the rest of this is gonna be?
Yeah.
You know? Like, well, whatever. I'm gonna find one thing, and then you end up finding 17.
And that's an interesting thought because I was at a conference and let's just say the warm up speakers were first time speakers just out the gate. And so I was there for more moral support. I knew a couple of them. I'm like, I want to be in the audience so they can see me
Yeah.
there type of thing. And um, I was really struggling until for me, I got ADHD. So I have to doodle to learn, right? It's the only way I can
Oh,
do it. I got to
cool.
distract myself to learn, right? So I started doodling in my notepad. And what I found is I actually started listening from a different perspective and my doodles started becoming notes. And I started learning. Now, they weren't great speakers, right? God love them to death. They were speaking a message. A couple of them were reading from their notes type of thing.
Yeah.
But the content of what they're saying, once I got past all the pizzazz or lack of, really started to resonate, and I still got some cool notes and takeaways from it, but it's to your exact point of it's on us to look at it and go, "Okay, what can I learn here? What's that one thing, if you will, that I
Yeah.
can take away from that?"
Well,
That's pretty
something grabbed your
powerful.
attention. I mean, we could go down a rabbit hole on how I feel about ADHD. Because I saw a TED talk that was like, "Yes, this." I can't remember who it was, but it was like a Chinese monk or something like that, or a Vietnamese monk, and they were talking about ADHD. It's like, do you think like back in the days where we had to literally hunt for our food, those kids had ADHD? And it's like, no,
Right?
because they're active, right? And I'm hearing you. I'm like, it's cool because you found a way to get yourself focused. I
Mm,
think it was just learning yourself, as soon as like something captured you, and it's finding those things that can capture you. So it's just directing your ability, because I think that people that say that, hey, I have ADHD, let's be real, I could probably be put on that because of like shiny object syndrome.
for sure.
I've never taken, I mean, it's a serial entrepreneur. It's like I get 87 new ideas just in the shower in the morning.
Right?
Yeah, but when you find the ability to and learn yourself enough with self-work to be like, "Okay, I know I can find tools for me to help focus my attention." It's just finding the things that you actually wanna pour yourself into. Because I look at my 13-year-old son, and dude, in public school, he would be branded this all the livelong day. My kids are in a private virtual school. They've been that way before COVID, right? They still have live classes over Zoom. They've been doing this for 5 years, so before the pandemic,
Nice.
it's like virtual school done right, and it's so awesome because, you saw the public schools fumbling around. This is like a
Yep.
side note, right?
I'm a side
Yeah.
product. I'm a prime, result of a public school
Yeah,
system. So
likewise, right? But at the same I mean, that's why I got horrible grades for a year, and even failed English class because I didn't do homework, because there was nothing that was able to focus my attention externally. The teachers and everything around me were not able to grasp me that way, and that can be the same with speakers at events. So
right.
then it became, well, I failed this, which means I have to repeat it, so I recognize that there's consequences. I don't wanna do that again. So I'm gonna figure out a way to focus myself just enough, but then still apply myself in other areas that I would like to be applied in. And I see the same thing in my 13-year-old son,
Mm,
and, to where it's his mind goes in so many different directions, but at the same time, it's like he understands outcome-based results, and that's because I've taught him that,
right.
It's like, here's what you need to do, find ways to and like correlations between things that you absolutely love, the things that you might need to learn to love, not because it's the thing, but because it's an outcome that you need in that moment in your life.
I did. I so agree with that. I read the book Atomic Habits, and I forget the author's name, but it's a great book.
Yeah,
And I decided like this year I wanted LinkedIn to be my platform. Like I was going to go all in on LinkedIn, figure out
powerful.
this
Yep.
damn platform. So, but I also knew that the idea of going and posting, comment, and engaging was going to be a lot of heavy lifting if I was going to do this every day. But I read Atomic Habits and he's like, dude, start habit stacking. So every morning I go walk to farm. And I used to listen to podcasts and walk to farm because it was a distraction
Yeah.
until I talked to a spiritual person that said, you should turn off that phone sometimes, see what happens. Shit, they were right. As one of my coaches, mentors, Jerry McNamara says, it gave me white space. It gave me a moment to not think about anything and then think about everything at the same time.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
cool. But I started after that walk when as soon as I came in, I'd sit down and start doing LinkedIn because I'd already kind of had that fun moment, that fun thing that I was doing with my walks that I came and did the LinkedIn right afterwards. And now since January, I added 10,000 followers on there and we
Yeah.
continue to grow and we keep adding revenue that we can trace back to it. But it all came because I found a way to make it work
Yeah.
for me, to
Dude,
your
you
points.
focused yourself, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you create, so if you look at like ADHD, what does it stand for? Attention deficit hyperactive disorder, right?
Yep.
I love the first 2 letters there, attention deficit. Deficit to me just means that there's something lacking, right? So
Yes.
what can you, and it's not, I don't believe that it's your attention. It's a different way to reframe this. I don't believe it's your ability to be attentive. I just think that the right things you have not surrounded yourself with to allow yourself to be focused on those, that's the deficit. That's the gap that needs to be filled. Because
Yeah, for me, it's boredom, right?
yeah. Well,
If
that's
if
when you
it doesn't
become hyperactive, right?
yes,
TH.
yes,
When
yes,
that deficit
absolutely.
exists, when there's nothing there to fill it, that's when you become hyperactive and you're like bouncing around like a ping pong ball because you don't know where to go at that point. So if you
Yes,
actively choose with the discipline, like you said with LinkedIn, you've already done it, dude. It's like, I don't know if you just haven't made this connection, right? Because you filled the deficit.
right,
And now
right,
you're able to be attentive because you filled the deficit with something that is outcome based, just like I was talking about with my
100%.
son. Yeah. So, dude, I mean, ADHD, I hope people are listening to this because this isn't like minimizing something that's been out there, right? But think about it. It didn't exist 30 years ago. And if you talk about medicine is advanced and all that stuff, whatever, like there's got to be a reason why there's a pilot program right now. Like you cannot go to flight school if you were on Ritalin as a kid, right?
Mm,
Because that stuff rewires your freaking
yes.
brain, man. So where now they've come up with a special limited pilot school. I just found this out a week ago because I want to go through flight school myself. It's like a bucket list thing for me, you know. But I wasn't on Ritalin, thank God. But I found this out that they have this like basic course to where you can just do these things. You can't fly at night, you know, and all these weird limitations just because they've recognized how this stuff rewires your brain. You know, so it's
Crazy.
horrible, and this is the FAA, right? They've discovered this stuff. It's horrible to put our kids on these things when all they need is, like my 13-year-old son, is just instruction on how to fill that deficits with things that they're interested in and correlate them to things that they might learn to be interested in.
So I want to play with this a second because you possibly have something that other parents don't have, right? And this is something I know running my own companies, and I run,
Yeah.
100 miles an hour.
Responsibility in parenting? No, I'm
Yeah, I don't have that. I don't have any kids, right? I have a full working farm with goats, so that's responsibility enough. But that's real. That's real,
Just
right?
made my day, man. That's awesome. That's like the
So, but we are somewhat trapped by our businesses. Like there's things that have to be get done. But we also have the ability to find time and
yeah,
manufacture our own time and our own schedule. I think, unfortunately, society as a whole doesn't have that same ability to manufacture time. You're working for somebody else, you're putting in time, you have to put in hours. Most organizations aren't like ours, where we are a family first organization. It's one
yeah,
of our champions codes. It's like, go be at the game, freaking take the vacation, right? Be at the recital, get the fucking work done, but be with your damn family,
yeah,
right? You're not,
yeah.
you're not a slave to the company. I don't think a lot of people are in an environment where they have the luxury of understanding their kids enough to be able to pour into them like you have with your son.
They might not be,
Um,
and I also think a lot of that's by choice too.
I don't disagree with that at
And
all. I don't disagree with that at
even
all.
with like, I did some, I wrote a book years ago. It was my first book, Situational Ethics, but I started doing some segments on TV networks. I mean, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, all of the main networks and the local affiliates, and it was about bullying, you know, and it
Mm,
was like the ethics of bullying was what was my segment title, and the main point that I made in there, which actually pissed off. I remember the Las Vegas network that was there because I actually it was ironic because I had the superintendent coming in right after me, right? And it's like the superintendent of the Las Vegas school system, and I actually got his back with what I said on air. And at that point, it was like they shut down. I was part of a group that like they shut down. I take credit for this and pride in this. They shut down anybody else from that group as far as being a guest on the show because I fucked it up for them, right? But
that's
the
awesome.
the reason is I started getting the school districts back talking about responsible parenting. And I'm like, let's look at this for a sec. Because I believe that parents, what they do is like if they're just pouring themselves into work, maybe some people just shouldn't be parents. You know, and that's
Mm,
kind of controversial, right? And some parents can be better parents if they do work all day, but then they come home and they devote that time to their kids. You know, as long as they're still slotting out that dedicated time for attention towards their kids to pour into them, like we've been talking about. But parents that just go to work all day, shove their kids in the public school system, and then come home and they have to chill and relax or whatever else, something's not right in their life right there. Because in that process, what they're doing is they're abdicating the raising of their children to the public school district.
I agree with that.
So, like the superintendent was, I'm like, I've got his back because that's a difficult job that he's got to fight for. Because in essence, you're saying, hey, teachers, principals, raise my kids
Raise
for
my
me.
kids. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why
100%.
bullying comes in because now it's like they already have so much on their plate and teachers are underpaid as it is, which is a whole different thing. You know, we could get into this might be a political statement, sort of, but I actually would love to see school districts institute like performance based incentives for
Dude, so
teachers.
would I.
So where it's like, hey, you know, I mean, testing, whatever, standardized testing, we can get into that wormhole in some other show. But still, like, if there's some kind of KPIs, I'm obviously a businessman, right? If there's some
Right?
kind of KPIs for the teachers, right? If half your class is failing, you shouldn't get paid what you're getting paid. If most of your class is excelling, right? And there's some kind of metrics around that we could put around it. Cool, you get bonused. You're being a good teacher. You're really pouring into these kids. If like the disciplinary write-ups that you have are the lowest in the school, bonus on top of that, because parents are abdicating their responsibility for a lot of reasons to the school district and the teachers to raise their kids, which I don't agree with. Kudos to the parents out there that aren't, because I'm sure there's
Right.
just as many that aren't, so this isn't a blanket statement, but those that are, I get it. Life is tough. You got to make ends meet, all those other things, but you have human beings that you're responsible for. Whether you planned them or didn't plan them, it's what God gave you on this earth right now. And there's a reason for it too. They are here to be raised by you, not anybody else.
And I agree with that, and I think
I got on
it
a
should be
soapbox,
this.
dude.
No,
I'm
you did,
passionate
you could
about
tell
this
that.
shit.
That's
Yeah.
why I didn't interrupt you,
Yeah.
man. Fucking run with it, right? When you find somebody that has passion in a direction and it's on fire, let them run because if the message most likely needs to be heard, and I'm a firm believer, if you're not pissing off somebody, then you're not standing for anything,
Yeah.
right?
I
So,
guarantee
but
I'll have half as many people cheering as that will be like, "Shut up, dude. You don't know my life." It's like,
right,
I do know your life. I
for
was
sure.
laid off, dude, when my twins were born. I do know your life. I had electricity shut off when my kids were breastfeeding. I had to steal electricity. I'm not proud of that. Paid it back, right? But to keep the power on for 3 days. It's like I do know your life. I'm not in some ivory tower and I work my ass off to get where I'm at, but I do know where you're at and I know that you don't have to stay there.
I often think that, and I have a legit fear, and one of my legit fears, at some point, somebody's gonna look at me and say, "It was handed to him," right? I know my truth,
Yeah.
and I know the work and time and energy in there, but I do think society as a whole, that when you hit some certain notoriety or certain level of perceived success, that everybody forgets where you came
Oh,
from,
yeah, dude. Yep.
and it's I gave a keynote up in Boston, and afterwards, I always love doing a Q&A with people and, getting feedback, and one of the questions is, "Donnie, when do you change up your content? When do you talk about something else?" And I just looked at him, I looked at the crowd, and I said, "How many of you, this is the first time ever hearing me speak?"
Yeah.
And 75% of the room raised their hand.
Yeah.
I looked back at the guy named Joe, and I said, "You don't.
Yep.
You gotta tell the same story over and over all because if people don't know where you came from, it's hard to buy in that you're telling them where they can do and the things that they should be
Amen to
trying to
that.
achieve."
I learned that from my
Yeah.
media coach a long time ago because I've had people on, it's like, "Rick, you always tell these same stories." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, but this is the first time these people are hearing it."
Yeah. That's
And
it.
my media coach is like, I did when he helped me put together segments for TV, I got bored with it, right? And the biggest thing because it's like, man, I'm saying that I'm doing the same show over and over and over again. I'm like, people are gonna want something different. But that was this thing. It's like, this is the first time this local audience is hearing that, dude.
Yep.
He's like, if you're starting to get bored with it, you're not performing well enough. You're not delivering it well enough. So find a new way to have fun with it in the same story. Then it becomes fresh for you. I mean, he coached me on that. I'm like, that was brilliant.
Right? And that's why I tell everybody, go get on as many podcasts as you can possibly get on, because the beauty of getting on a lot of podcasts, yes, you'll get a little bit of exposure, yes, you'll get a little bit of SEO, but you're gonna learn to tell your story the proper way.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna get asked the same questions over and over again by a lot of shitty podcast hosts out there that don't know how to interview,
Yeah.
right? And so you'll learn to tell the story so they'll lean in.
Bingo.
I wanna bring it back a little bit to the incentive side of things because I
Yeah.
really think that that model could be put into business itself.
It needs to be. It absolutely needs to be. Yep.
What if we created a program where we were incentivizing our employees to hit milestones they bonused if they accomplish this on top of the company hitting their overall goals? I think that would be a fantastic way to look at running a business versus just a straight, "Hey, this is what you're paid. Now give me 90 hours a week."
Yeah, you
You
got
know?
it. In my company
Mm.
on that, I second this wholeheartedly because as we acquire companies too, we put incentive-based compensation plans in place for almost everybody. And I say almost everybody because we're still trying to figure out a department like finance. Ironically, it's the money departments. That was like, well, what are some KPIs for the money department? And it's
Right?
I had a CFO of a public company one time tell me that, listen, your finance department adds no value. And he didn't say it wasn't needed, but what he meant was it doesn't add actual like valuation to your organization, because it's
Mm.
almost like, it's task based stuff, they have to, but there's got to be something like, there's got to be a way because if they have
Well, the first thing that
responsibility.
popped in my head was collections, if collection stays to a certain level over a certain period of time, because I know it's a thing in our company,
Yeah,
you
that
know,
affects cash
chasing.
flow. Yep,
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 right on.
right.
95% of our stuff is on auto pay for a
Yep,
service-based
same.
subscription company,
Same
but
with us.
yes, yeah, that's a good
But you
KPI.
even with the service-based subscription, you got the credit card expired, now you gotta go track down the credit
Yeah,
cards and all that kinda stuff, so you got that portion in it that somebody's gotta be chasing down
yep,
and
you
cleaning
got
up.
it. Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, cybersecurity, so it's technicians, it's supervisors, it's managers, it's sales. Everybody has a specific set of KPIs that we put in place that they directly affect with their actions, and that's what they're incentivized on. And there's also like two
So
different
smart.
levels too, because I like to try to tie everybody in the company back to top line revenue, because
Mm,
we're a growth oriented company always, right? Because I believe
right,
if you're not
right.
growing, you're dying, right? If you're in the middle, it's really you're dying anyways if you're not doing anything. So everybody has like KPIs, which is this is how good we're delivering for our customers, right? And they're actually KPIs that we even show our customers too. We're completely transparent in that. Like if it's a resolution time, it's like we always want to see this below 30 minutes. And if it goes above 30 minutes, we have reviews with it's like you were at 47 minutes last month, but we're going to show you exactly why. Because we might need
Mm,
your input on some of these things. So it's like they're managing with it. They're responsible, even down to like text, dude. They're responsible for contributing to these things. And then on the opposite side, there's also a sales commission because if they can identify revenue, even if they're fixing my printer can't work, right? Or something like that, or if they're
yep.
fixing that kind of trouble tickets and they start asking questions like, what, maybe you need some new solution here, because it sounds like with your workflow, so they're thinking beyond the problem that's in front of them. They can sell some revenue and they're incentivized and commissioned off of that revenue too. And it's
Nice.
just literally we're encouraging people to help people. That's it.
How did you come up with that whole framework, and then how did you determine the KPIs inside of that
Yeah,
framework?
the KPIs are very customer based, and I'll give you an example here because you run a B2B network,
Yep.
and you've got to look at. So this is where the consumer side. It's like full circle now in our conversation, right? Because most people in my industry in IT, they focus their KPIs internally, meaning that they're looking at it
Mm,
like, okay, we had this many trouble tickets come in from our customers, but we closed this many. Look at how much of badasses we are,
right.
and all of those are so internally focused. It would be like Michael Jordan looking at Scottie Pippen. Yes, I'm 44. I watched the Bulls three-peat, right? I live in Chicago. I'll use this example. Okay. I watched all of it when I was a teen. But it'd be like Michael Jordan only looking at Scottie Pippen to try to keep his game on point
Mm,
within his own team. It's like, no, he would look at, back at that, it was Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, all of these other greats that existed during that era to be like, I'm going to be better than them. That's when I needed,
mm,
like looking externally at who he was interacting with. It's the same as our KPIs. So rather than like tickets open, tickets closed, I would look at them and be like, well, if there's 30 people in this company, right, in this customer of ours, and they generated 30 tickets, but we closed 30 tickets successfully, that doesn't really mean that we're that great. Because to me, I'm looking
yeah.
at it from their perspective, thinking that, well, in essence, it's like every person in that company had a problem every single month.
That's a great perspective.
Like, that's ludicrous. So I see that. I was like, geez. I mean, this was like 8 years ago when I shifted the
Right.
focus, right? I'm like, well, this customer fucking hates us, you know?
Right.
Even though they haven't said it, right? And they haven't articulated it yet, but I started, it's like, what's their level of pain? What's important to them? So we switched our KPIs around to be externally focused with what matters to them. So I'm like, okay, it's IT, it's cybersecurity, stuff's gonna break, people are gonna get hacked. There's no way to completely prevent that stuff from happening. But we started looking at industry trends and then profitability. And I'm like, you know what? I think we could do like a 3-to-1 ratio. Now we're more like a 4 or 5-to-1, consistently, but that 3-to-1 is minimum, being like we expect things to happen. So that same company of 30 people, if they have 10 tickets that month, we're doing pretty good.
Mm.
And they start to feel less pain because it's like 2/3, the majority of the company has had no issues. So if you're
And
looking
how is your team affecting that then, right? 'Cause how do you do that drastic of a drop off of tickets? What are the functions that they're doing to ensure that more tickets don't come to the
You
table?
bet. It's focusing outside the current problem that's there. One thing that we started doing is, we started, it's like, we're going to review every ticket and find the root cause. So we came up for some like after the fact, almost like a postmortem, right?
Right.
No, that just became too much work because I mean, when you're talking hundreds of tickets a month, it's just a lot of time to sit down there. It's like, what if we did broad strokes? What if we looked at like the top 5 types of problems? And we started extracting data out of that. So if it was like basic thing, right? If it's like internet outage was a common ticket in this company of 30, like they're saying, I can't get online, I can't get online, I can't get online. We'll say 7 out of 10 of those tickets where I can't get online. It's like, oh, we should probably one, get them a new internet provider because
Right.
because that one sucks ass, right? And two, maybe get them a backup internet provider because we can do that technically and it'll just switch over. And that means that they just magically keep working. They never notice a thing when their primary goes out,
Mm,
but we're notified. And then we can
it's
start to
smart.
look at that from the back so that it eliminated so many tickets when you looked at it from their perspective and you started to zoom out. And there's ways to do broad strokes that we determine. I'm sure this applies in any service-based business.
For
Once
sure.
you actually look at the data that's there, and it's important to track the data. Once we were able to figure out what data we needed to look at from our external perspectives, that's when we figured out this is infinitely scalable. We can
Mm,
go buy
that's
other
massive.
companies now because we have the right data we're gathering in order to affect a solution to keep us efficient and scalable.
That's huge, dude. And I'm even thinking through our company, even our groups and the likes, and how we shift to an external KPI like that because I think we're caught up like a lot of companies. We play
Yeah,
firefighter
yeah,
versus preventing the fire from happening in the first
exactly.
place.
I told people, I'm like, we're not going to be the plumbers of IT or cybersecurity. Nothing against plumbers, right? But
Right?
I don't know many proactive things that plumbers do. It's, that's why I use that analogy, right? It's like we're not
Right,
going to have you
right,
come out and replace all of our pipes every 5 years. That's the,
right,
but
right.
what we will do is call you when it leaks, or call you when something really just like spitting out everywhere. So it's like we don't want to be that because we have things we can do to be proactive, and that's what sets us apart from everybody else. And then it
Mm,
becomes because we're so proactive when shit does hit the fan, we can get you recovered way faster than anybody else because we've already done the
mm,
proactive work on the front side. But then here's the beauty, right? And I would encourage any service delivery based company to be transparent with those KPIs. So depending on the size of our customer, we show them these every single week or every single month, depending on how big they are or small they are. And we start saying, okay, here's what happened, right? So we even got beyond like the top 5 types of problems and we went into looking at the top 5 people in every
mm.
customer. And overall, it's like Susie over here, she keeps putting in tickets for Microsoft Word, right? We found out that it's not a technical problem, but she just always calls in with these how-to things, which is what it ends up being. And we're almost training her on how to use something like maybe she's a paralegal, right? Why doesn't she know how to use Word? Did she put on her resume that she knows how to use Word? Is this somebody that you value that you want to invest in? Or maybe it's QuickBooks, right? For a finance person or something. They don't really
Right.
know it. It might have been a bad hire, but do you want to invest in this person? So we're putting the choice back in the seat of our customers because it literally has nothing to do with us, our performance on something, but we made it have to do with us by becoming that person on the same side of the table as them. And that's in service based. I use that phrase all around. It's like
That's
put
huge.
yourself on the same side of the table as your customers.
Dude, that's wicked smart and a fantastic philosophy. I'm gonna steal a lot of that just
Please,
so you know.
dude, it'll be a better world, man.
Oh, for
I wish
sure,
I
for
wish
sure.
everybody that and you talk B2C, but even B2C, I wish Comcast, my internet provider at home, had this philosophy, you know, rather than
'Cause
just
there's nothing worse than calling into a help desk
yeah,
and realizing they're fucking helpless.
exactly.
Like, they cannot do anything to solve your issue.
Yep.
All they can do is read from a cue card, and that's their
And
manus.
you learn their system, right? Because I mean, especially
Yes.
it's like, okay, I've already done this. I'm gonna write down this stuff. So when I call, it's like, here's my problem. Here's what I've already done. And they're like, well, we have to reboot the things. And like, no, I've done that twice already. No change. What's our next
Yep.
steps? Is that sending somebody out to help me? Okay, cool. So now I took control of this scenario. But that's like anything else. That could be like a carpet cleaner. It's like there's a
Yes.
spot that's down there. Well, did you change the lighting to make sure it's not a shadow? Or or whatever it is. It's like yes, I moved my lamp around. I turned on all the lights. The spot's still there. You didn't get it.
I've unplugged, plugged it in, I've
Yep.
done all the things, it's crazy. Well, dude, we could do this all day.
Yeah,
This would be a continuous conversation. It's a hell of a conversation, and we'll have to come back and do this again another
I'm
time,
in. I
man.
hope I brought value
Uh,
to your audience today,
oh,
but to
dude, this was
use.
fun. This was a lot of
Yeah,
fun. I love it when you can find somebody that can just have a conversation and it just
yeah.
flows. So, how do people find you? How do they reach out to
Yeah,
you?
at Mr. Rick Jordan on all social platforms, and that's the best way. DM me, no joke. Especially on Instagram and LinkedIn. You can go to my website; it's a great website, whatever. But DM me, follow me. That's the only thing I ask because I put content out like this all the live long day, and I'm just trying to make the world a better place.
Love it, dude. Guys, if you made it this far with us, thanks for hanging out. Do us a favor, take a screenshot wherever you're listening to this and post it out on social media. Tag me and Rick in it. We'll both find it. We'll come interact and engage. We're both heavily on social media. But it also lets us know this is the kind of content that you're into and you like this kind of stuff. So tag us out there. Let us know you're listening. Otherwise, love you, made it. See you. Bye.